Welcome back, everybody, to the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I'm your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated, Hondo Carpenter, and your host. And just thrilled for the sixth time to present to you this guy, a living NFL savant. He is a guy who's coached many, many years in the NFL, Super Bowl winner. This gentleman trained at the feet of Sid Gillum, and he learned from Al Davis. There is no better resume in all of football than what this guy carries into any room he walks into. And we just have nicknamed him the Pigskin Professor as he's dropping truth bombs with a verbal buffet of football goodness. Coach, if people haven't enjoyed this, they just don't like football. You've been outstanding. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. I just, it's fun. I enjoy it. And it's a great opportunity to just share some thoughts.
Well, you're impacting and touching people. Coach, let's get right into it. It used to be playbooks were installed in training camp and teams went with it. Now teams install their playbook
system, yeah.
But then they have scouts for every team. And as the season goes on, when it gets to that game, they've got 30, 40, 50 pages of more playbook to add that just for that game. And so I was told by one player once, he said that the playbook more than doubled by the end of the year. And he was in the Super Bowl. And they called the play from training camp that they had never run in the season. He said just because the team had made such an adjustment that they did not foresee happening. And he goes, and luckily we all remembered it, but he talked about how playbooks evolve now. It's different. I'd like you to talk about how playbooks were and about that evolution to what they are today, please, sir.
Okay, first of all, I think the sophistication of the playbook and the expansion of the book and the changes in certain aspects also goes hand in hand with the complexities that have come from defense. Back in the day, heck, I remember when the Pittsburgh Steelers introduced cover 2 as a coverage that started in college. See, it was an option defense. It was designed to stop the wishbone and the veer with the cloud corners rolled up. And then later on in the 70s, the quarter halves coverage concept came into the NFL, but it started in college football because it was an option defense from college football that they integrated to a pass defense in the NFL. So your single safety high cover 1 or your cover 3 scheme or cover 6 weak side rotation 3 deep, strong side rotation 3 deep, and man to man, or like the old days with the LA Rams back in the 50s, they played 4 across the board, straight 4 across, lined up at 8 to 10 yards deep. And they would play all their coverages off of those disguises. Well, now that the coverage schemes, all the combo coverages have become factors in the game, the brackets and things like that, and you've got multiple DBs out there, it's like become a Chinese fire drill. Well, now offensively, in anticipation of what coverage you may think the opponent's going to show you, you've got different patterns that you like in your passing game to attack specific coverages. Some are better than others. There are some routes, some patterns you can throw against cover 1, cover 3. But, when you get to cover 2, I want to have there's a different way to attack the coverage. So you got to have some plays that fit for cover 2 beaters. And then you have your cover 4 beaters, your quarter halves beaters. And so, yeah, your playbook grows because of the specificity to which those plays are designed in terms of attacking a coverage or attacking a defender. The other thing is you analyze your opponent and you may say, well, we got a weakness over here defensively against this corner. Well, I'm going to have a couple of routes that could be a variation off of a base pattern in anticipation of the matchup I might get with that defender against my wide receiver. So, yeah, your book will grow based upon your specials and your matchups each week. Your system stays the same, Your verbiage is still all fundamental, basically installed in OTAs and mini camps and all that, and in training camp. But it's all the finer points of the game that change. And some teams play different red zone schemes. Well, each week you got a red zone offense that's a little bit different than it was the previous week because you're playing a different opponent. Conversely, you go play the same opponent later in the season, like say you're playing the Raiders, playing Kansas City, playing Denver, playing the Chargers. Their red zone package against you that you saw in week one may not be the same when you see them a second time during the season, because maybe they had to make some adjustments defensively because of their own personnel and their own successes. So you have to modify some things you're doing. Or offensively, you may have a couple of players who now have blossomed later in the season who were, in the pamper period stages of the game when you first brought them in, like a rookie or a first or second year player. And now that they've evolved and they've matured and they've become a greater integral factor in your package, so you might have some different patterns and packages for them as the season goes along, as they've matured and developed in your offense. So flexibility is the key. And the thing about it is, it's not so much nowadays where I'm limited by practice time. Everything is marshaled, so to speak, with the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. How many days a week I can wear pads, how many hours I can be on the field, how many hours I can meet. And so that's where now it's become all situational football. And now it's more about as the season progresses, I'm more concerned about saving your legs, keeping you fresh, keeping your arm fresh. But now the mental part has to be able to step up another notch. And that's where my partner and I, we developed the AI, the artificial intelligence, and the 2D, 3D technology in Playbooks now, where we have a playbook, whether it's pass protection, pass offense, run offense, or whatever, where we can put the camera in the helmet of a player, and you can sit here on your computer and now see the field from the same perspective that you will if you were practicing or on game day. And now you can go through all your assignments. You can see all the nuances that I can, as coaching staff. Yesterday, I asked one of the Raider guys, I said, how many people have you got on this staff? There's an army of people out there on the field. He says, we have a staff of over 30 people. Well, heck, when we were coaching back in the 80s and the early 90s and even into the 2000s, and we had 8 guys, 8. Now they got 30 something. They got an offensive analyst. They got a defensive analyst. They got a quality control coach on offense. They got a quality control coach on defense. They got a quality control coach on special teams. So you've got all these people who got nothing but eyes on film all the time. And so you have a laboratory of coaches who do nothing but study tape all day. So now the game, it becomes so mentally tuned and fine-tuned with 30 sets of eyes as opposed to 8 sets of eyes. What they see and what they can create, what they can design is, unbelievable.
Now, Coach, I promised everyone last week we were going to discuss your company, and I want to dig in on that. But I have one more question, then we're going to dig all in because I am so fascinated by what you're doing. So it used to be, you'd go in and watch film with your players. But now, I know that you know this, but for our listeners, as soon as a drill is over, you'll see guys digitally taking the little cards in and they're downloading and cutting up all of it. So when practice is over, already downloaded to a player's iPad is every rep that they took, both individual, team, and then collectively. I mean, the coaches walk in from practice and the entire practice has already been cut and loaded, and they can start watching film immediately. And now they know, because each player has an iPad, how much is he actually watching film, not watching film. We've seen in Arizona where Kyler Murray, his contract required X amount of watching of film. Have we made the game so digitalized and so informational that we're going to at some point reach overload? Are we going to reach a place where it's literally people are going to be frozen because there's so much information? There's a term I'm trying to think about.
It becomes robo football.
Yes. Talk to us about that, would you, sir?
Yesterday at practice, they're having all these periods. They got the air horn going off. They got the scoreboard going with the time frames. And then all of a sudden, they go, okay, everyone over to the boards. They have two giant boards on the practice field. So the offense and defense goes over to the boards. They just finished 7-on-7, which is skeleton. We call it skelly. They finish team, and bam, they're over at the boards. That's the next segment of practice is a 5-minute period for them to go watch tape of what they just did on the field on these giant scoreboards that are posted on the side of the field. And so they're over there already and they're watching the drill that they just finished and getting coached up now before they go to the next segment. That is how scientific and how advanced it's become. And see, that's where the game has just taken quantum leaps. The technology is, and here's the other thing. The older coaches, who have been around forever, who like Tom Moore, who's 86 with the Buccaneers, had been with Peyton at the Colts, and he groomed Peyton. He still carries a legal pad and a box of number 2 Ticonderoga pencils around with him on the sideline, and he's 86, but he says they're going to drag me off the field before I leave, but he still draws it up by hand. But now they got the pads and they got the tablets and all that stuff. But all these players in today's game have grown up since they were knee high to a fire hydrant with cell phones, iPads, tablets. So for them, it's not shocking where the game has gone technologically because they've been raised in it. It's the older coaches who are still in the league who are, thank God I got an IT guy. I say, hey, come in and fix this for me, or how do I get to this, or how do I do that? Where now you hand it to me on a platter and I just got to look at it. I don't have to worry about it, because if I had to worry about coding and all that crap, hey, I'm sorry, my brain would have been fried years ago. So that's where the game has changed. The players are, so much more advanced now that you can do that.
The term I was looking for was paralysis by analysis. Can just be so much. I have a buddy who played with Peyton Manning, and he talked about there was one time when Peyton Manning gets in the huddle, and I'm going to clean it up, but basically, forget all of that BS. This is what we're going to do. And he just looked at each guy. You do this, you do this, you do this. They went out, ran the plate, and got the victory. And he said it was kind of nice. It was like old school playground football a little bit. Football, at the end of the day, it is that. And do you think there's a danger, and maybe you don't, is there a danger of it becoming paralysis by analysis?
I think we passed that point, to be honest. I really do. I remember one time coaching the Pro Bowl. We had a guy named Jim Kelly and a guy named Warren Moon at quarterback. And we had not put this play in during the game, the whole week. So Jim's at quarterback. I'm standing on the sideline. I call him over. I said, now we can do this. Line up in this set. We got slot over here, get tight in there. I tell you, run a couple of these routes, run 2 seams. He goes, hey, I got it. I didn't even have to finish my thought. His eyes, he goes, I got it. He goes back out on the field. We had not practiced this at all. Not a lick. He calls the formation, lines up, drops back, hits the tight end on a seam route, and he's jogging down the field. He turns to me and he goes, yes. And he's smiling like a little kid who just had, the greatest prize in the world. He's got thumbs up. He was more elated about drawing it up in the dirt and taking it out into the huddle, as opposed to if we had practiced this play all week and called it. See, the improvisational skill, these guys are great athletes, but they're still kids at heart playing a game. And they love the fact that all of a sudden, bam, it just happens. And the spontaneous success that they can have, as you say, drawing it up in the dirt, is what gives them that extra elation and that excitement, because that is their ingenuity, their genius, and their skill to be able to do it.
And not so, Coach, you're in. I'm sorry. I want to dig in. I'm fascinated by your company, and you're still involved in the game, and it's, you could revolutionize. Really, I think it's revolutionary. Share with everybody what you're doing, the name of your company, your partner, what you guys are doing, and and where you want to go, would you?
Sure. George Kish is my partner. And the funny thing about it, we've known each other since the early 70s. We coached together in college ball. He was my kicking coach. He kicked at UC Davis. He'd gone to Cal, then transferred to UC Davis, where Jimmy Soker was the head coach, and they won a lot of Division II national titles back in the day. Kicked a couple training camps with the Rams and everything. And phenomenal mind, a great technological mindset. He'd been vice president of all these companies that went back. We started software years ago. We did the Joe Montana Sega Genesis Sports Talk football game. Sold over 30 million units with Sega. And then we also did the NCAA football game with Sega. And so all of that stuff was great. We had players at the Raiders who were playing the game. And an unknown player comes into we're in a quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end meeting room. We're looking at tape one day. A defensive guy sticks his head in the door and made a comment to me. I'm running the tape and everything in the front of the whole room. We got everyone's in the room and everyone but the O-line. And so he says, Coach, I was playing that Joe Montana game that you all designed and that you did all that stuff for the other night. He says, I didn't like how I looked in the game. So I said, I'll tell you what, and I'm not going to mention his name, but I said, you start to make a few plays on the field during the game, you'll look better in next year's version. And so you talk about a mic drop, the whole room just busted up and got laughing. All the players are laughing because what we did was reflective of what you did on the field. We had attributes and exponents for every player. Now we've taken it beyond that. It's not a game anymore. It's an adjunct to the playbook, to coaches. The whole game now is from the mental aspect, especially since I've reduced practice time. The CBA says you can only be on the field X amount of hours. I can only meet with the player for so many hours. We have dead periods during the offseason where I cannot communicate to a player. However, it doesn't say anything about technology. So now everything has been done to where we have the AI that George and I have coded in. He does the coding. I send him a ream of paper. We transfer it to code. I'm still the paper and pencil guy. He laughs at me. I didn't start even doing email till like 2000 something. I mean, I just, hey, my mind was just not in that stuff. That's why we're such a good match, so to speak. And then so what we do is now we've created everything with Play Create. We put the camera in the helmet of the player. You can get 1 million reps in your whole game plan, or a coach can send you your red zone package even before you're out at practice. The night before, when he designs it, gives it to the quality control guy, sends it to the IT guy, boom, it's in your computer. You can, and I got those coaching points in there and everything, and work you through the progression. So when you come into the facility tomorrow for a red zone offense, you as a quarterback or receivers have already seen it, haven't done it on the field, but you've been able to see the big picture in 2D. Then we're able to flip the screen to 3D, put the camera in your helmet, and you've seen yourself run this a dozen times the night before while you're sitting in your lazy boy rocker. And so now it's all about the mental prep. It's all about the mental rehearsal. And I had a couple of former Raiders who I've sent bits and pieces of the game, and one of them says, why the hell didn't we have this when we were playing? Well, technology was not there to give you that. But now that the technology is there, it's I remember, was it Yogi Berra?
Yeah, Yogi Berra.
Once said, the game is 90% physical, the other half's mental. and so one of those things. But the game really, here's the bottom line, Hondo. We know these players can run, they can throw, they can catch, they can hit, they've got speed, they got balance. They all are great athletes. They all are finely tuned machines. Now, the key thing for them is how can we enhance their mental acuity as much as possible so they can take all of that skill and apply it on the field. It's like this, okay? Now, in the old days, I used to tell the players, you go to practice like that, I want you to paint a masterpiece. Okay, now think about this. And this is really how I really believe. And I think it's in business across America or across the globe everywhere. That football field, I would tell the guys, that field is a giant canvas. Okay, you're like a Chagall, you're a Rembrandt, you're Gauguin, you're a great artist, okay, they have canvases, okay, that field is your canvas. They have a palette of colors. They mix their colors, okay, and paint masterpieces. Okay, your palette of colors is your speed, your quickness, your hands, your eyes, your coordination, your change of direction, your quads, quickness, agility, speed, balance, your, the velocity with which you hit. All of those things are your palette of colors. I want you to go on the field and you're going to paint a masterpiece utilizing all those God-given skills and talents that you've honed and refined, and you're going to create your masterpiece on the field. Now, the great thing about it is you come off the field, you see the tapes and you learn. Now, the next day you can go back out and you can refine your masterpiece and make a better masterpiece because what you've learned from the previous day. And you can keep building and refining it so that you actually can develop, quote unquote, that ideal masterpiece. And so that green field is your canvas, that white line, the apron around it are the boundaries. But we have 11 guys offensively, 11 guys defensively. We've all got to fit together, but you all have a chance based upon your God-given talents and skills and what you've honed and developed to be able to build your masterpiece. And so when you come off that field, you can do an evaluation of yourself and say, okay, I watched the tape. Now, how can I be better at this? How can I do this better? How can I improve over here so I can go back out and be better tomorrow? I'm better today than I was yesterday, but not as good as I'm going to be tomorrow. I told Max Crosby yesterday, we were talking on the sideline. He came over and introduced himself and everything. I said, Max, I tell you what, I enjoy watching you play. I like your motor. I like your engine. I like your intensity. I like your enthusiasm. You're right up there with Howie and Townsend and Hendricks and all the great Raiders, pass rushers and all those guys to the Lord. I said, the key thing for you to remember now is that who you were is not who you are. And who you are now is not yet who you're going to be tomorrow. Every day in every way, we're going to get better and better and better. I'm better today than I was yesterday, but not as good as I'm going to be tomorrow. It's the same concept. But now he has the ability to be able to hone his physical skills, but then he can also improve from the mental aspect of studying the opponent. So basically now we've created an environment. We did a pass protection package for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Their whole, it's all in their language, their terminology, their formations, all that verbiage. It all can be done in a matter of seconds by a quality controller. They can just type in and they want to change red to blue, change yellow to green in terms of a backfield formation. They want to call it trips instead of gold, whatever. They can call it whatever. They can call it tan, silver, doesn't matter. They can put it in their verbiage, and now their players can take it wherever they want to go. And
awesome.
It's about the mental rep.
Mm-hmm. So, Coach, I got an email for you from a listener, if you don't mind. This comes from Todd Y. Todd Y. And Todd lives in Anahuac, Texas. Todd says, Dear Coach, love listening to you in the podcast. I'm learning so much, but I have a question for you. I'm a little bit older than Hondo, not quite as old as you. And I think the CBA rules are hurting the game. I know they shouldn't be able to hit for 8 weeks, 3 practices a day. I think back in the day, it was too much. But I almost think it's gone too far in making the game less, where now the first few weeks, you see teams playing poorly because they're not getting the practice time. They're not getting the hitting time. Do you think the game is hurt by all of these new CBA rules?
The thing about it is player health has become the driving force in modernizing and adjusting and toning down the intensity of the practices, the length of practices, the contact, the physical nature of the game and practice, the concussion syndromes, the traumatic brain injuries. Unfortunately, there's a lot of great Raider players who've passed, from dementia, from ALS and things like that. I mean, I don't want to name names, but, there are guys who were so near and dear to our hearts for decades, who were so successful, Super Bowls, multiple Super Bowls, and they've all, gone on to the bright gridiron in the sky prematurely, primarily because of a lot of the injuries sustained during their playing careers. And so the league now has, become more cognizant of that factor, and they've had to tone it down. The great thing about it is they're aware of it. They still need to take some strides. They're making adjustments in rules also about injuries, and now they're taking out the hip drop tackle, and they take out spearing, and they took out leading with the contact with the helmet, and those are all good things. The game still can be played. Now the players have to modify how they've learned and how they've played the game to fit the new rules. But safety has to be a factor. You've got better equipment, you've got bigger, faster, stronger individuals, so the velocity at which today's game is played is far different than it was a decade ago. Back then, back in the 60s and 70s, you had players who were substitute teachers, you had players who were selling life insurance, you had players who were working in stores during the off season. Now you got guys training almost year round. So their bodies are so much more in tune. They're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, they're leaner, they're meaner, they're more explosive, they have greater acceleration. It's like you go out to practice and they all are like Ronnie Lots walking around. And Ronnie used to talk about when he went to strike a guy and make a hit. He said, my goal is to hit him like I'm trying to hit the guy 5 guys behind him. And so Ronnie would sit there and, like it was dominoes. He was trying to hit the 5th guy. So the force with which he struck the player was enough to hit if there was a 5th guy behind him. That is the kind of velocity that they now deliver all the time. And so, yeah, you're going to have injuries. And so you're going to have violent contact. It's a collision sport. Dancing is a contact sport. Football is a collision sport. And now the league is trying to rein in some of that to make it safer for the players.
Awesome. All right, Coach, you're the best. You've always been the best. If you didn't catch out Coach's article earlier this week, it was a Star Trek Vulcan mind meld of football knowledge. I was just blown away. It was so good. We love his articles. We love him on the podcast. Coach, tell everybody the name of your company.
Okay, Coach Sports Technology, CST, and George Kish, Kiss, spelled Kiss, but pronounced Kish. He's from Hungary, actually. And it's 2D, 3D, augmented reality, football. And it's, camera in the helmet. There's nothing like it. There's nothing out there. I tell you, I had a guy tell me it'd be another 2 decades before somebody else is going to find a way to simulate this because they don't have your brains and his coding and your knowledge of the game and all this. He said, no one's, if you're not the innovator, the imitator's going to always be chasing. If you ain't the lead dog, the view never changes. And so we're already into another generations beyond this, just waiting for technology to kick in to what we can do, what we want to do next.
He's the best. The great coach, Tom Walsh. Love him, cherish him. He's a football treasure.